Undercover boss buys a hot dog at his own diner, stops cold when he hears two cashiers. John pulled up the collar of his coat, his flour-dusted hands wiping absently against the old, worn apron. His tired eyes landed on the order screen, and just like every day for the past 10 months, that name appeared again. Sophie Miller. One large pizza, extra cheese, cash payment. The address? Not a home, not an office. Just a simple note. East Bench, Oakwood Park. 10 months, every day. Rain or shine, never missed a single day. John sighed softly, his gaze drifting to a small framed photo hanging on the wall. His mother, the woman who always said, "Pizza isn't just food, it's how we bring people together." Since she passed away 8 months ago, John had left his desk job to take over John's Pizza, keeping the promise he made to her. He'd gotten used to the regular orders, the everyday highs and lows from loyal customers. The woes, perfect. This was different. No one knew much about Sophie Miller. The staff only said she always stood there right on time at that old wooden bench in the park. She always paid with a crumpled $50 bill, always tipped exactly $5, as if it were some ritual. She never accepted deliveries at home, never stayed to chat, and most curiously of all, she always checked the box before accepting it, as if what was inside wasn't just a regular pizza. John folded his arms, leaning against the counter, eyes narrowing in thought. Who orders pizza to a park bench every single day? Does she eat there alone? Or is there something more he didn't know? The curiosity that had built up over months finally found its way out. Tonight, I'll deliver that order myself. John quietly took off his apron and slipped on a plain uniform. No name tag, no sign that he was the owner, just a regular delivery guy. And that very night, at the old wooden bench in Oakwood Park, John wouldn't just find the answer to a 10-month-old mystery. He would open the door to a story he would remember for the rest of his life. That afternoon, a soft spring breeze rustled through the ancient trees of Oakwood Park. John pulled his car over to the curb, gripping the warm pizza box tightly. Strangely, his palms felt damp. His eyes scanned the area, and then, just as his employees had described, there she was, Sophie Miller. She had a slender frame, a faded blue hoodie worn thin at the shoulders, old jeans, and battered sneakers. Her brown hair was tied neatly at the nape of her neck, revealing a delicate, pale face, but her eyes were bright and always on guard. John walked toward her slowly, offering a friendly smile. "Your pizza's here, Sophie." Sophie froze for a moment when she saw the unfamiliar face. But then, as if regaining her composure, she gave a faint smile and quickly lifted the pizza box lid to check inside. A precise, almost practiced movement, as if she wasn't just checking for extra cheese, but for something far more important. "Thank you," she said softly but firmly. From her jacket pocket, she pulled out a crumpled $50 bill. Her hand trembled slightly, but she quickly tucked the moment away. "Keep the change," she added, already stepping away from the bench. John watched her go, a strange feeling rising in his chest. Instead of sitting down in the park like most people would, she hurried toward the exit leading out of the residential area, toward the abandoned part of town where shuttered old buildings stood, silent and forgotten. She hugged the pizza box tightly against her chest, as if it were something precious, something she couldn't afford to lose. John hesitated for a second. His heart told him not to cross into someone's private life. But then there was something about her urgency, that unnatural caution, that pulled him into a wave of relentless curiosity. "I have to know, who is she bringing that pizza to?" Without turning on his headlights, John quietly followed from a distance. His footsteps blended into the faint whistling of the wind through broken window frames of the deserted streets. In the fading twilight, her small figure pressed deeper into the darkness. John had no idea that those silent steps would lead him closer to a truth, one he would never, ever forget. He moved carefully down a narrow dirt path, flanked by ancient trees casting long flickering shadows on the damp ground. Each step was measured, breath held, in the earthy scent lingering from the rain the night before. And then, head through the drooping branches, an open clearing revealed itself. There, in a place no one ever visited, a small patch of woods had been cleared, and 3 faded tents stood propped up between the trees. A small fire pit sat quietly at the center, faint smoke curling up into the dusk, its presence as fragile, as unnoticed as the hidden life in this forgotten corner of the world. And then he saw her, Sophie, but this time her smile was strangely tender. Her face lit up as she opened the pizza box, and in that instant, children came running out from the small tents. The youngest couldn't have been more than 6 or 7, a tangle of messy blonde hair. The oldest looked no older than 13. Their eyes lit up at the sight of the pizza, as if it wasn't just food, but a miracle. After a long and weary day, I'll slice each first, okay? Then we'll see if there's any left, Sophie said gently, tearing the pizza carefully, as if she were handling something as precious as gold. A little girl tugged softly at the hem of Sophie's worn hoodie, her round eyes looking up. "Miss Sophie, did you eat yet?" she asked, in a small voice. Hidden behind an old tree, John clenched his fists. He heard it clearly, that soft, bittersweet laugh from Sophie. "I'm already full, sweetheart. Go ahead and eat, don't worry about me." But John knew. He knew just by looking at that slender figure, by the way she watched each child take a joyful bite. She was someone well acquainted with hunger and had chosen, once again, to endure it. His heart tightened painfully, and in that moment, he realized for 10 whole months those pizzas weren't ordered for a lonely woman. They were the only meals these forgotten children had, hidden away in the cold corners of that silent forest. And Sophie, the quiet girl with her old coat and crumpled bills, was their final line of hope. A lifetime in business had taught John the value of every dollar, every slice of bread. But standing there before this quiet sacrifice and simple, unwavering love, he had never felt smaller. For the first time in years, John felt a deep, overwhelming respect for a woman he had only just truly come to know. That afternoon, rain poured suddenly from the sky, cold and heavy. Under the gray clouds, the path leading back to the woods turned slick and muddy, and John was there again, this time with a heavy, restless feeling pressing on his chest. Then, through the downpour, he saw her, Sophie. She stood on the empty clearing, her shoulders soaked through, her hands clutching the pizza box wrapped in a thin scarf. But what made John's heart nearly stop was the scene unfolding right in front of her. 2 unfamiliar men, wearing dark coats, holding a set of blueprints and a large announcement sign, stood blocking the narrow path leading into the camp. Their voices rang out, sharp and threatening in the air, heavy with rain and damp earth. "This land's already been bought, girl. Bulldozers are coming next week. Tell those kids to clear out, fast. This place is about to become a resort, not some filthy homeless camp." John clenched his fists until his knuckles turned white, blood rushing hot to his face. But Sophie, her figure was small against the curtain of rain, yet she stood as straight as a steel pillar. The pizza box in her hands was like a fragile but defiant shield. "This is public land. You have no right to kick anyone out," Sophie replied calmly, rainwater dripping from her chin. "If you plan to destroy the only shelter these children have, you'll need an official order first." The older man smirked coldly. "Bad news for you, sweetheart. That order's coming Monday, but in the meantime you better clear the way if those kids are still hanging around. Well, we can't guarantee what might happen." But Sophie didn't budge. Though the rain lashed at her face and her body shook from the cold, her eyes shone with something John couldn't look away from. A fierce, unwavering instinct to protect, without condition, without compromise. And right then John knew he couldn't just stand there and watch anymore. His fist tightened, then slowly released. His eyes flicked toward the woods, to the thin canvas tents where the children huddled in fear, waiting for Sophie to return with the only things that brought them warmth, a slice of pizza, in hope for tomorrow. He had to do something, right now. Shoving past the rain pounding against his face, John turned on his heels and raced toward his pizza shop. In his mind, the puzzle pieces were already snapping together. Clear, sharp, unstoppable. It was as if fate had been waiting for him to take this step all along. The children's place of refuge couldn't just be wiped away. And Sophie, she deserved a different life, a better one. The rain had long since stopped, but inside John, the storm still raged, all through the night. The light in his second-floor office above John's Pizza stayed on. Between the empty coffee cups and stacks of paperwork, John knew one thing for sure: he couldn't afford to waste another second. The phone rang urgently. "I need a copy of the sale agreement for the land surrounding the old community center. Check for me if that development project has been officially approved. Are there any legal loopholes? Michael, you still owe me a favor. Now's the time to repay it." In the days that followed, John was no longer just the meticulous pizza shop owner, carefully monitoring every batch of dough. He became a man of action, sharp, relentless, and unwilling to accept defeat. And soon, he discovered this: the resort development project was still awaiting final environmental approval. The old community center, though abandoned, hadn't yet been officially transferred to the developers. And most importantly, a small, overlooked clause: if someone were to purchase and renovate the center for community purposes before the project's final approval, land ownership would have to be reconsidered. John smiled for the first time in days. Within 2 weeks, John's Pizza became the heart of a movement the city had never seen before. The sign out front no longer simply read "Great Pizza Every Day." It now bore bold, striking words: "New slice of pizza, one spark of hope." Customers flooded in, not just to buy pizza, but to donate spare change, cans of paint, and gently used blankets. Children brought their old boxes of crayons and notebooks. The elderly gave small portions of their savings just to have their names written into this mission of change. John stood before the growing crowd, speaking for the first time about the dream his mother once held, but never lived to see fulfilled. It was Haven, a home not just built with bricks and stone, but built from compassion, a place where no child will ever have to shiver through the night, where no mother will have to quietly suffer in the shadows. His eyes burned with both determination and deep emotion. "I need all of you not to do something grand or impossible, just a little kindness, a little sharing, and together we'll turn that forgotten place into a beacon of light for anyone who's ever felt lost." And from those very hands, Bella's Haven slowly began to rise. The old crumbling walls had been painted over, with colors of warm sunlight and hope. A small playground stood where scrap wood once lay forgotten, reborn into a place of laughter and life. The cold, damp basement had been transformed into cozy little rooms, each one warm and safe, a place where children could finally sleep in peace, without fearing the roar of bulldozers in the night. John stood at the center of the renovation site, watching as the stained, peeling walls were replaced with vibrant, bright colors. He imagined it: Sophie and the children stepping through that door for the first time, a place no longer just a dream on rain-soaked nights. And he knew that moment was almost here. That morning, sunlight poured down the narrow street, falling gently on the freshly painted sign, the scent of drying paint still lingering in the air. Bella's Haven, where everyone has a home. John stood at the gate, a simple white shirt on his back, his hands tightening and relaxing with each slow breath. Beside him, his team quietly prepared for the grand opening. Somewhere nearby, the sound of children's laughter rang out, between the flower beds freshly planted by helping hands. And then he saw them. From the end of the street, Sophie appeared. She no longer wore the faded old coat. Instead, she wore a simple Cebu dress, soft, bright, and full of life. For the first time in countless weary months, a real smile slowly spread across her face. Beside her were the children, clothes clean, hair neatly combed, their eyes sparkling like it was the very first time they dared believe something good could be meant for them. John smiled and stepped forward. "Welcome home." Sophie stood still for a long moment at the gate, her eyes glistening as she read the sign. "Bella's Haven." Her voice trembled. "John, is this really for us?" John nodded gently. "For everyone who's ever been lost, Sophie. And I hope you won't just walk through these doors. I hope you'll be the one to keep this light burning bright." Sophie turned to him, eyes wide, the weight of his words still settling in. Then John reached into his jacket, pulled out a folder, and placed it softly in her hands. "The new center manager, someone who knows exactly what these children need, because you were the only one who ever stood for them. I can't think of anyone more deserving." Sophie fell silent. She looked at the children, now bursting with joy as they explored the new playground, their laughter ringing out across the sun-drenched garden. And then she turned back to the man before her, the man who had turned fragile little dreams into solid, sheltering walls. She didn't need to say a word. She simply nodded, slow but certain. As the afternoon sun dipped low, the community room filled with the sounds of children's laughter, the warm, rich scent of fresh pizza drifting from the newly built community kitchen, lighting up the entire space with life. John stood quietly by the doorway, his eyes following Sophie as she guided the children to organize their new study corner. She no longer sat alone on that cold park bench, no longer huddled over a pizza box like it was her only shield against the world. Now, she stood tall, her eyes were filled with hope. She had become the safe harbor for all those small, fragile lives that had finally found their way home. John smiled softly to himself. All of it had started with one simple question. Why would someone order the exact same pizza for 10 months straight? Who could have known? One small question, one brief moment of curiosity and kindness could open the door to life-changing miracles. And that is the simplest, most beautiful magic this life has to offer.